in today's video, we're going to glue on this fretboard. It's not a perfect fretboard, it's just a square piece of wood that has been milled to be perfect, but it's not cut out to be a fretboard. When we go to do the frets, which is not going to be a part of this video, I'm gonna explain that a little bit more. I'll talk about it a little bit now as well, but first we have our neck blank here. It's just a square piece of wood with a neck shaped object basically. We have a truss rod. You might have seen everything. It all perfect and flat. First off, we take a bit of masking tape and we put it down and we cover the truss rod all the way down, like so. Whew, I need to calm down a little bit. I've been going at this a little bit too crazy. And we take a razor blade and we back this off a little bit and we cut the tape off just before the end of the neck, like so. I hope that's going to be good. Everything is good. Take the... make sure it looks nice. It looks nice. We cut about on this end. You can see through the tape because it's so thin where the truss rod ends, and we will just cut off the tape about a mil and a half or something. Then we'll take a ruler and we will align it with a mark. We'll make a mark. So just like a little bit before the tape at the edge, we'll make a mark there. And just before the tape right here, we'll make a mark. You can do it on both sides. And we'll align the ruler with the tape like this, just those two marks, and then we'll just cut along like so, and we'll remove this piece of tape so. Throw this in the trash immediately and flip this over. I'll do the same thing again on the opposite side. Or we'll switch to another ruler because this one was long enough, and we'll just cut along the fretboard like so, and we'll remove this piece of tape as well. At least we'll try to. Come on. Did I not cut hard enough to cut through the tape? Like so. Perfect. Or something similar. And I know some people think that you should inlay a piece of wood, or that you should do a bunch of things that I just feel like is unnecessary. You can argue with me if you want to, but I really think that tape is paper and paper is wood, and it's, all the same. So yeah. This is perfectly flat, so this lies perfectly flat on there. This is perfectly flat, this is perfectly flat. The tape is 1/16 of a millimeter. It's so tiny that it's insane. I'm gonna line this up here and make sure I get a perfect join right there. I'm gonna move this over here And I'm gonna take my ruler, my little tiny ruler, and on this end here of the fretboard I'm gonna try to measure out the middle. So this is 6.6, so 3.3 should be the right. Yeah, let's all agree that I agree with myself. 3, 1, 2, 3, and there we have it. And I dropped it. I'm trying to get all the basic woodworking, the like roughness of the guitar out of the way, so that I can focus on other things. So I have the middle of the fretboard measured out. I use this to do that because I can just measure from both sides and make sure it's the same on both. If I line this up here, and I line it up with the marks that I did here for the outcut to fit, and I line this end up with the center line, then I should get a good, even, nice fit. Now we're all ready to go. So let's start off by removing some things so that we have a better, clearer understanding of what we're doing and where we are, because some of these things are not necessary for what we're just about to do. But one thing that is good is to be able to very quickly grab a lot of clamps. So I'm going to take all my clamps and just put them right here. And when you hear guitar builders say that you can never have enough clamps, this is one of those moments where that's what they're talking about. So I think I'm ready. I'm gonna just crack my back and try to relax. Take a deep breath, and realize that this is me breathing. If you know that quote, then we can be friends. Okay, so line this up. No, see? Line this up. I think you might have not seen what I said no to, but what I said no to was not was the fretboard was flipped upside down. It doesn't matter, both sides are perfect, but it is good to be good. I'm gluing the fretboard a little bit past here because we're gonna scoop this out and make a little scoop here, but I want to scoop the fretboard at the same time, and the reason why I want to do that is because then we'll get a flush, even transition. If we do it, the two pieces offside from each other and not together as one, this could be problematic, or potentially be more problematic than it needs to be. So, wood glue. Come on. I like to put down too much wood glue and just remove it. I don't like to have to fiddle around and put on glue and remove it and put on new and fiddle around. I put on too much glue immediately, make it nice and even, smear it out, make it all good, make it all look nice. Work fast, work quick, because now the glue is on, and we have to get this over with. Basically, I'm gonna try to even it out. I'm using my fingers for this, but that's because I feel like there are tools that could do this job for you, but they can never do the job as good as your fingers. So there we have it. It's all on. It's all good. I think it's even Steven. We can remove it from the truss rod thing just because it's annoying. There we go. Okay. Go around the sides because we already have runs. We have about 24 hours to glue this on, so we don't need to stress. But we also shouldn't dilly-dally because after 20 minutes it's dried. That was supposed to be a joke. Okay. So put down the fretboard and align this end here. We'll put down a clamp at this end, a bit in, but not over the top. Clamp it just a tiny bit, enough for it to hold itself in place, but not enough so that everything is squeezing tight. And then I'm gonna align it over here, realign it over here again. I think that is good. Yeah, I think that's good. I'll take a clamp, I'll clamp it down over here, and just a little bit of pressure, align everything. These sorts of clamp squeezes the fretboard out. So clamp goes like that, the fretboard wants to move that way. So I'm being extra careful, making sure everything is. See, now it's moved here a little bit. Just press it back to place, just a tiny bit. But there we are. And screw it down, like so. It's all good. Let's take our next clamp. This one doesn't have a hole, so let's use something else. So that we don't mar up the fretboard. Even though we're going to sand it, I don't want to do that. And I try to put the clamps down as close as I can so that I get as much pressure and make everything as even as I can. But I'll adjust to that as well. So there we go. Let's see, can we get these clamps in or do we have to take it off? Yeah. Let's move that in a bit, I think. There we go. And then let's lift this off. Ooh, it's getting heavy. It's getting heavy. Let's put it down. I'll move you down so you can see what I'm doing. There you go. Hopefully you see something. Need a piece of wood. I don't want to mar up my fretboard. I try to put the clamp in the middle of the fretboard as well. Squeeze everything out. And yeah. There we go. I haven't tightened the clamps yet. If it seems like I have, it's just because I'm starting to get tired from all the other things I've done. You might not realize it if you're not paying attention, but I'm recording a lot of the videos at the same time just because there's a lot of rough work. I need it just out of the way, basically. So I try to just get all of that recorded at the same time. So let's move this clamp back. I don't really have time to film what I'm doing right now because what I'm doing is basically working against the clock. And I really would hate for this neck to be ruined because I am dilly-dallying around trying to find the camera angles, because it's not important. It really isn't. You either get what I'm doing or you don't. If you don't, questions below. That's all you have to do. I'll take one of these clamps and see if we can get it in there. I know you might think that's a lot of clamps. And that it's a little bit over the top and that it's maybe is an overkill, but like no air pockets, no gaps, no places that there are no pressure, like nothing. You need to really get in there. So I'm gonna wait a couple of minutes just to take a breath, relax, collect myself, and also let the clamps do their thing, and then I'm gonna feel them and just tighten them a little bit. You don't want to over clamp them, but you can feel when you touch the clamp if it's giving away, and the clamps will give away. It's the problem with these sorts of clamps. You're twisting them and they will sort of untwist themselves a little bit. So I'll wait a couple of minutes, talk to you right now, and I'll come back in a second. Just gonna pop down and I'll just retighten them, and then I'll retighten them again. And then we'll see if there's anything else I want to tell you about this process, about, you know, sticking on a piece of wood to another piece of wood that I think is important. But I'll do the whole clamping, touching the clamps, readjusting them a little bit for like 10 minutes or something, just going over them and over them. After that, the glue is going to have started to set enough where the whole process of touching the clamps is going to be it's going to be useless. After 20 minutes, the glue has basically done its work, and then after 40 minutes it's basically dry enough for us to start working on it again. And after 24 hours the neck's just completely dried, and the kind of glue I'm using won't even be, you know, moved by water or anything. It's gonna be completely. I know some of you might want to know what sort of glue you should use. There are things like Titebond and things like that they talk about in America. It's not really something you can get here. And I just use. You have to buy wood glue and experiment and try to find something that you think is solid. And just buy something that works really good. A good solid wood glue. I don't think you need to use Titebond. I think it's just a brand and it's just been used in America, and therefore people think it's the best glue, but I really don't think it matters, because we're not building something that is going to take that much abuse. So I have a regular wood glue here for building, you know, houses. I mean, if you can hold a roof up, you can hold the guitar together. And I'm using wood glue that can be outside, so that I know that it will take finish and it will take water and things like that. And one of the reasons why I care about that is because I don't really know what finish I'm going to put on. I usually stay with like lacquer based finishes, because I feel like water based finishes are a little bit milky. I haven't found any, at least yet, in my journey of going through things that is actually making that I am pleased with. But also, if you play a guitar, you sweat, and I don't want my sweat to loosen the glue bond. So, just something to think about. When it comes to things like using epoxy and things like that for gluing on, I would say I have no experience doing it that way, because I am very classical in my idea of thinking that you glue wood together with wood glue because that is made to be used for that, and only if you're using like plastics or metal or something else, some sort of aluminium or something, you'll have to adjust your glue. But I think going with wood glue for wood is the way to do that. But I know that there are guitars, and I know that there are people, and I've played some of those guitars where they're using epoxy, and I can't say that it matters. especially not like tonal or anything like that. But that's also a strange thing to try to talk about, because you can't play a guitar and feel the difference between glues, because it's, you know, the guitar is already built, so it's a strange conversation to have. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna tighten this down now a little bit more. Okay, so the neck is drying. I'm relaxing. I'm gonna take it easy for a bit. Might not do anything more today actually at all. I have the body, but I feel like there's no real point in stressing. We're gonna have to have a little bit more of that crazy, just going all over the place and getting everything done, and then we can start relaxing. We need to route the pocket and the neck. We need to route the cavities in the body. I mean, damn it, I'm starting to get tired. But then after that, we have to scoop the neck as well. We have to do all of that, all of those things. Some of those are a little bit more, you know, the rough work, but then we start slowly to move into things like sanding and finish work, electronics, and so we can start taking it a little bit more easy, which is going to be nice. And hopefully you'll stick around. I hope you're enjoying these videos. The only really thing that I think is, I didn't do it on this neck. Maybe I should have done it. I kind of forgot about it, but one thing that I like to do is score the two pieces with a razor blade, like doing X's like this, so that the glue can bind even better. That's one of those things that I like to do, that I didn't do on this one. I don't think it's going to matter that much for me. I mean, I don't think that the neck is going to fall off or anything, or fall apart, or fretboard, you know, but hopefully it will be good. But it's something that I like to do, and yeah, you can think about doing that if you want to. The only thing that's really hard about gluing on a fretboard is, you know, you have to be very careful and make sure that you know exactly what you're doing, that you've planned everything out. I hope you could sort of see that a little bit in this video, that I knew that my pieces were perfectly flat. I knew that they would go together. I knew everything. I drew out the center line. I marked out where the truss rod was. I aligned everything perfectly, and I clamped it down, and everything came together really smoothly. And the neck is now gonna rest. I'm just gonna leave it to dry. I know that in 40 minutes I can continue, but I think I'm just gonna edit a little bit of video instead and take a little bit longer and relax, because I'm a little bit beat now from cutting and sewing and doing all of these things. It's been a couple of crazy days here getting started, and I don't want this to be one of those experiences for you guys where it's like, oh shit, he's just rushing through everything and just going wow. But it's, I mean, like, when it comes to the rough parts of a guitar, like if you start building a guitar, and especially if you've done a couple of guitars, but you can make like 90% of a guitar, or 95% of what is a guitar. You can do all of that in half a day. Really, you know, some things take time, sure, and it can be physically challenging if you have to like stand there and mill things, but most of the work, that, you know, but those last 5% or whatever, you know, all the sanding and finessing and filing and shape, you know, all that, we're gonna have to slow down a lot sooner. So I hope I'm not rushing too much, but I don't know. We'll jump into a Q&A now, and hopefully you guys have some interesting and fun questions for me, and some ideas. And so maybe if you feel like I didn't explain something, because it's always hard for me to know, because some of these things I'm just going by what I've done before, and I sort of forgotten the process, and I'm just doing it. So hopefully you guys have something fun to say. So we'll jump into a Q&A now, and yeah, it's time for the Q&A. Yeah. Hello and welcome. Today we have one question for the Q&A, and it's from Jules Smith again. Thank you so much. At least someone is trying. Anyway, he's saying, I've thought about buying a cheap guitar and changing it to a fanned fret guitar. Maybe there's something in the fretboard. Maybe talk about changing the fretboard at the same time as you're going on. Yes, so yes, it's actually not that hard to make a fan fret neck, and it's not that hard to change a regular neck like this one here into a fan fret. There are a couple of things you have to think about, and there are some challenges that can occur. Actually, making a fan fret guitar is easier than making a regular one, and the reason why is because if you're hand sawing, for example, and don't have some sort of jig or something put in place for when you're cutting the slots for the frets, then these are not. It's very easy to make them not completely straight. You think you're making them straight, but then when you look at all the markings you've made, they can be a little bit wobbly like this. And the thing is, like the human eye is super good at seeing that. So if you do that, you might be like, oh no, I've destroyed my fretboard and I can't use it. But most likely you can still use it. It just looks a little bit off and a little bit wonky. And the placement of the frets in themselves, if you're off by like 1/10 of a mil, you might think that that's a super big deal, and we have some YouTubers that would argue that that is a big deal. But the thing is, the whole like neck thing is you're never playing in tune anyway, because this is just a sort of evened out, calculated, mathematical version of tuning that isn't completely true. And yeah, I could go more into detail on that in another video maybe, but for the sake of this, that means that it doesn't actually really matter that much, to be perfectly honest. And so it's the important part is that you've done what you can to get it straight, but you don't have that issue with fanned fret guitars, because you don't have any parallel lines, and so if you mess it up a tiny bit, it's not actually that bad. And I know that sounds kind of crazy. So this is what I would do, and I'm going to give you 3 options, because I feel like there are 3 levels to doing this, and you can decide, you know, where you are in your building things level, and do it the way that you think works. You have to pull the frets out of the neck, and then you have to measure out where the 2 E strings are going. If you look at the nut, you can see that they're like 5 mils in or 3 mils in. You have to draw out that line the entire way down of the neck, and that's where you're going to measure out your new scale length on your fretboard. You can, for example, go with a Fender-like for your your lower E, and a Les Paul scale for your higher E, for example. You don't have to do it that way, but yeah. And then you just have to connect those 2 lines. So you measure out where one of them is on this side, and then one on this side. And you don't even care about the center line. And then you just connect those 2. You draw a line between them and connect them. And that's where you cut your new fret slot, basically. That's super easy. And you can fill in the old fret slots with a little bit of sawdust or something like that. If you sand the fretboard, you'll create dust that is from the fretboard. You can fill in the old ones, and yeah, that would basically be it. You put in your new frets. You have to think about when you radius them that the radius will be strange, and that's one of the things that could be a little bit more difficult with doing a fan fret guitar, because and this is one of the things about fan fret guitars that no one ever talks about, but the radius isn't actually like down the neck like this. It's down the neck sideways like this. And if you look at something round, do I have something round to show you? Oh, if you look at something round, and if you tweak it to the side like this, you can see how the curvature changes. And so that's what you have to think about when you go to radius your frets to fit in the neck. Usually you solve that by just radiusing the frets to the fretboard you want to go with, the radius of the fretboard, and then you over radius them and push them a little bit further so that they have to be squeezed out. You do that anyway on a regular refretting of a guitar, but in this case you would have to go a little bit more in your pushing down. So for example, I don't know, I'm not even gonna try to do some sort of head math on that, but you press it a little bit further, you squeeze them together in your radius machine to make the radius even smaller. And that's a very easy thing. Now, it won't look that nice on the guitar, but maybe you don't care. So you can also put a veneer on the fretboard. Find a piece of veneer that is as long as your fretboard. That means from up here to down here. And you glue that on first. You pull out the frets. You fill in the frets with a little bit of sawdust and super glue. You sand the fretboard smooth so you don't have any bumps or anything like that. Preferably with the right kind of fret sanding block. Fret sanding block looks like this. This is a 9.5. And then you smear out glue, you press out the radius, you press out the veneer over the fretboard, you glue it on, and then you can start doing exactly what I just said, which is you measure out a 3mm or something, depending on where your E strings are, a line that goes all the way down. You don't have to go from the center line or anything like that. You go from the edge of the neck, you go all the way down, and that's where you mark out your entire frets to the scale that you've chosen. You find a fret somewhere between the 12th and the 7th. You can go with the 7th or the 12th, but also somewhere in between. You make that one your parallel fret. That is your middle fret, and that depends on how much you want the neck to move. It's just a taste thing. If you want the neck to be up here, the frets to be really, really straight, then you go with something like 7. And if you want them really, really curved here, so that this is where the scale is the strangest, well, not strangest, but leaned most, you go with something like 12. You most likely, says this, you can't really reshape this much. You will have to sort of find a way where the nut lines up and the twist isn't too much. So yeah, just hold out your fret markers and align them accordingly. That's the only fret that you have to make sure is perfectly straight, isn't slanted or anything. The one that you decide is the straight one, and so that you just make it parallel to the not parallel. You make it a perfect 90 degree from the center line of the neck. And if you need a center line drawn out, you just take your measurement somewhere down here, across, divide it in half, and you take and do the same right here. You measure somewhere around here and divide it in half, and then you can just connect those two and have a center line drawn out. And that's very easy to do. But anyway, yes, I feel like I'm explaining all of this sort of if you haven't noticed, I'm sick today. Sorry. No, but you glue on the veneer, and then you can cut out all your slots, and if you filled the old slots correctly, you shouldn't have any problem. That's a super easy way to do it, and if it wasn't cheap guitar neck, that's probably what I would do, because I feel like it's okay. The next thing you can do is you can plane down the fretboard. You can pull out all the frets, you can plane down the fretboard. Be careful so you don't go too far and hit the truss rod, because then you'll probably ruin your planer. It depends on how good you are with your tools and if you know how to make it perfectly straight and nice. You also don't have to remove the entire fretboard. You can glue a fretboard onto another fretboard. And then you'd radius the fretboard, which, maybe you want to radius the fretboard and make it even wider than before. And then you just do the things I've already said. You measure everything out, you cut everything out. You'll have to make a new nut, but that's, If you can do all of these steps, then that shouldn't really be a problem. And you will know with your measurements where the nut is supposed to go, and it will be a wider, weirder nut. Probably have some fan frets nuts laying around. Yeah. I can't find them. Anyway, that's a super easy thing to do. I know that it might sound crazy, and I know we're like fan frets are very popular at the moment, or for the past couple of years, and people like them or seem to like them, but they're not that hard to make. So if you want to do that, go right ahead. It's a little bit challenging, mostly, but mostly it's mathematical. But you know, as long as you take your time and you make sure you measure everything, it's going to be perfectly fine. The next issue you're going to have is, you know, the bridge alignment and things like that. Making sure that you can intonate the guitar. The way I solved it on one of my guitars, which maybe you guys have seen, the one with the skin leather, finish, is that I measured out where both scales would end up, and then I put a bridge in the in-between middles, and then I changed out the screws on the bridge so that I had longer screws for the one that needed that and shorter for the other one, so that I could intonate the guitar. It depends on how far you're going also. You know, if you're really going for like a bass on the top, you might have to make a custom bridge or something like that. You know, so yeah, but most likely, without knowing exactly what it is you want to do, you have something like, for example, a Strat you want to have on the top, and you have something like a Les Paul that you want to have on the bottom or the high strings, you know, here. And then I think it's like 1 centimeter or something in difference, which can be problematic. It can be. But if you have something like, for example, maybe a Telecaster, you have more natural. Give me a second. Yeah, so you have more natural movement in something like a Telecaster bridge. If you see here, you can see that you can compress it a lot, and you can move it out really far. I have long springs, usually. Then, for example, on something like a Strat, you can see that there is not that much movement here. It also, of course, has to do with how big your saddle is, but you can change all those things around and get something else. And the same thing goes with something like, for example, this. I hope you can see it, but you see how little movement there is for the saddles in there? Obviously, this one has another perk, and that is you can pull out the studs that holds it in place, and you can re-drill those and really get that angle that you need. But then you might have to re-sharpen the little line that is in the middle of the post. So yeah, that's actually probably going to be a bigger problem than reshaping the neck. You might think that, you know, sanding down and removing the fret, sanding down the neck and filling in all the slots and cutting new ones and making a new nut, those things are going to be the problem. But actually, I think that the bridge could be the real issue for you, where you have to really like be have imagination. I would probably suggest that instead of buying a cheap guitar for this, you maybe buy a kit guitar, because then you can make all the mistakes you have to do and then just cover them up with paint, which trust me, as someone who's made guitars, being able to just cover things up with tape, I meant paint. Did I say tape? Damn, I'm sicker than I thought I was. If you make mistakes, you still have the raw kit. You build the entire raw kit, you make all the changes you want to do, and then you paint it. And just being able to cover everything up with paint and having all of them just disappear because you filled them up and you sanded it all nice and smooth, and you put on new primer and you sanded the primer smooth, and then you just repainted the entire guitar. No one is ever going to be able to tell that guitar wasn't, you know, a fan fret guitar from the beginning, if you go that way. And especially if you also go like putting a veneer on the fretboard, maybe even binding, that could be cool. And then, you know, doing all that. Obviously, if you just want to try something out and see what happens and you don't care what it looks like, then, you know, doesn't matter. Anyway, I hope this helped. I hope this wasn't too much of a weird rambling. I feel like I could have... It was clearer in my head. But anyway, yes, I hope this helped. And I hope to get to see this guitar that you have in your head. You can always send pictures over on Instagram to me. I'm so happy that some of you guys are doing it. The same thing goes with the questions. The questions are still up. Obviously not the videos that are already made, but for the future videos, the questions are still up. So if you are seeing this part and you're like, I wish I could be a part of the Q&A part, just head over to Instagram and you'll see all the photos with all the Q&A. It says Q&A in the pictures. You'll know exactly what video that part is for. So yeah, I hope to see you guys over there. Hope to see you in the comments below. And until next time, don't forget to stay awesome and cool and go and build a guitar. It's one of the most rewarding thing I think a musician on any level can do.